So a couple of years ago, a lady posted a TikTok talking about the great weekend that she was going to have because she was child-free. She'd be able to get up late and make some shakshuka.
It's 10:45 a.m. on a Saturday. I am 29 and single, and I don't have kids yet. Here's what your Saturday morning looks like when you're single at 29 and you don't have a kid running around the house. I say all this to say, whenever I'm hard on myself about why I'm not married and I don't have kids and I should be further along at 29, almost 30, I wouldn't want to do anything else this Saturday. And I know that you can do all these things when you have kids and you're married, and I understand, but the effortlessness and ease of my life, just kind of focusing on myself and the shakshuka I want to make or the Beyonce concert I want to go to really pays off when I'm hard on myself for not being where society tells me I should be in life.
And the conversations that came out of this simple TikTok was absolutely crazy. It all of a sudden became political, and conservatives were kind of outraged that she would flaunt the relaxing weekend that she was able to have just because she is a child-free woman.
For anti-freedom freak Matt Walsh, apparently that was a highly offensive video, so offensive that he started ranting about it. Her life doesn't revolve around her family and kids, so instead it revolves around TV shows and pop stars. Worst of all, she's too stupid to realize how depressing this is.
She's living the dream. Like, bless her heart. You know what I thought when I saw that video? America.
And to me, it felt as though they shamed her for the fact that she was quite happy that she was able to live this life, almost as though she should be ashamed of herself. And since then, the conversation about child-free has just exploded globally. It has become a global issue. The decision to have a child is not something that you make lightly. You have to factor in a multitude of things like finances, time, your mental health, and most importantly, if you even like children. And yet I feel like society pushes people to make these decisions before they truly even have weighed their options. And most recently, news broke that Russia has banned child-free propaganda, and they're framing it as a threat to their nation. And to me, this is a bit of an extreme stance, and it's revealing a growing global discomfort with the child-free movement. So let's explore how we got here and what the future might hold for the child-free movement. What's up, YouTube? It's tinysey, and welcome to my digital garden. So it's been a while since I've posted a YouTube video. I have been away on vacation, but I'm back. I'm getting back into the groove, and we have an addition to, oh wait, you can't even see it. We have a new addition to my display shelf. So let me show you guys real quick. I found this in Thailand, and it's just the cutest thing. As you can see, I collect a lot of like trinkets and cute stuffed animals. So this will be the newest addition. And I know you guys always want to see, you guys asked for a tour. So how about I just introduce when I have new things? Now that that's out of the way, let's get into today's deep dive discussion. First, some background on the child-free movement. This isn't the first time that I've covered this topic, and if you want to look at the previous video that I made, I will link it down below because that video covers a little bit more of the background and the historical importance of the child-free movement than I'm going to dive into today. So the voluntary child-free movement has sought to destigmatize the decision to not have children. And it really is empowering women and families to make this choice for themselves rather than letting society, parents, family, friends influence you to do something that you might not want for your life. And historically, women have been shamed or just labeled as selfish or incomplete if they decide not to have children. And this has been a huge burden, and it still happens to this day. And this movement is really trying to push back on those narratives and have us question those assumptions that we make, saying children are the only way to have a fulfilling life. But of course, this movement is not without controversy. There's problems on both sides, and we see a lot of problematic things that are happening and just toxic things that are happening on both sides of thought. So while the child-free movement is trying to empower women, empower families to kind of have that voice and agency to choose their own path in life, there are some detractors, some people that might just hate children and sneak their way into the child-free movement and use it as a way to voice those just kind of toxic opinions. They'll say things like, oh, you're crotch goblin. And they'll even go as far as to shaming parents, maybe because they're poor and they decided to have children, or just being extra judgy against parents parents, and this detracts from the movement itself, and it makes people that might have been allies feel like a bit hesitant to join the movement. But also on the flip side, we see people that are advocates for having children all around that will just try to convince you and feel like it's okay to sort of impose their opinion on having children onto you. Something that I feel like is very toxic, but somehow normalized. And there was a viral moment where an NFL player, Harrison Butker, went on stage at a commencement ceremony, and he decided that he was going to share his ideology about marriage, children, and family.
For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
And so this really shows how normalized it is for people to assert their beliefs that marriage, family, having children are the only way to have a fulfilling life. And even going as far to say that that's when his wife truly started to live a fruitful and happy and fulfilling life. It's a huge assertion, and people feel so comfortable because it's been normalized, and that's been the traditional way that we defined a fulfilling life. This tension leads to toxicity and a negative cycle that happens on both sides. And so that's generally where we're at with the child-free movement and kind of what the sentiments around it are. So recently I stumbled across a TikTok that was talking about Russia and how they are banning child-free propaganda. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Let me look into it. So the government is essentially framing it as a movement that's harmful to the birth rate. Let's take a look at this article and get a deeper dive and understanding at what Russia is thinking. Its birth rate falling, Russia targets child-free lifestyles. The country's lower house of parliament passed a law that would ban what it calls propaganda discouraging Russians from having children. What I'm picking up on is the word discouraging. I think the word discouraging is already assuming that the child-free movement is actively trying to dissuade people from having children. Russian lawmakers on Tuesday voted to ban the advocacy of child-free lifestyles in a move that is part of a broader effort by the Kremlin to reverse a falling birth rate and promote the country as a bastion of traditional values that is battling a decadent West. There's probably a drop in the birth rates in Russia, but this is honestly a problem that we're seeing globally. And I guess in effort to make that rate not fall so much, they're targeting the child-free movement, an assumption that that's the reason that the birth rate's falling. So they unanimously approved a bill that would ban any form of propaganda promoting the refusal to have children. That would include material on the internet, in media outlets, in movies, and in advertising that portrays child-free lifestyles as attractive. I wonder what the confinement of propaganda is, because it's just so broad, and who's to say what's childbearing age? What if it's just a character that's fairly young but technically could have children and she's having a good life? Does that count as making the child-free life look good? Like, this is a bit ambiguous. Violators would be subjected to fines of up to about $4,000 for individuals and $50,000 for legal entities. So I'm guessing if you're actually a movie agency or like a bigger entity, essentially, $50,000. Everything that needs to be done to increase the birth rates must be done, Mr. Peskov said. And everything that obstructs that must disappear from our lives. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. I don't know, like this is just grounds for a bunch of assumptions. Like, was any research done? Like, how do they know that it's the child-free movement that's dropping the birth rate when globally and even in America we can say that it's way more than just people that are advocates for child-free and empowering women. It's the finances, it's the state of the world, it's the economy. There's so many more things. I could think of 20 things to do before banning child-free propaganda. Separately, Russian lawmakers on Tuesday also passed a bill that would ban adoption of Russian children by citizens of countries where gender transition is legal. We must do everything so that the new generations of our citizens grow up oriented towards traditional family values. I don't know for sure, but it sounds like there's probably a fear against Russians being influenced by liberal ideas. Russia is very conservative, but they also have that power to limit people's free speech. It really undermines people's ability to make their own choices and to make informed choices and see both sides. So while it's tempting to stifle certain ideologies, letting the government dictate personal decisions sets a very dangerous precedent. So over the past years, Russia has been suffering from a continuous demographic decline as a much smaller generation of women born amid the chaos and poverty that accompanied the fall of the Soviet Union has entered childbearing age. And not counting Crimea, which it annexed a decade ago, Russia's population is about 145 million, somewhat smaller than it was in 1991 when the USSR broke up. The number of deaths have exceeded the number of births in Russia since 2016. However, Russia was able to keep its overall population steady because of migrants, most of them from countries of Central Asia coming to Russia to work. But those numbers have been shrinking because of the hardening attitudes towards migrant workers in Russian society and declining wages in dollar terms compared with the other destinations for migrant workers. Alexei Raksha, an independent demographer, estimated that Russians' overall population would shrink by 500,000 this year. Russia is also likely to experience a decline in the average life expectancy. But Mr. Raksha said that the ban on propagating child-free lifestyle won't have any effect on Russia's birth rate. Sounds like there's a whole bunch of other things happening. Sounds like their economy is just facing some issues with the war, but then also migrants not wanting to come into the country. There's something going on with the economy. There's something going on with the people. There's something going on with the temperature of the country. But let's talk about why this is a global issue. Something that I've been noticing is that there's just this unraveling of the romanticized image of a mother. And this is because of social media. Now that the curtain has kind of been pulled, women have a more full picture of what motherhood is. And that's why information and representation of all lifestyles is so important. We also see that modern parents are judged for every single thing that they do. To be fair, a lot of them put it on the internet themselves. A lot of people blame parents for how children act nowadays, their addiction to technology, how they treat teachers in the classroom. And of course, people are going to look at this and go, is it really worth it? Like, do I want to have children if I'm just going to be judged for every move I make? And all of this is probably part of the reason that the birth rate is declining, not only in America, not only in Russia, but like worldwide. And so if we take a look at a place like South Korea, we see that being child-free is seen by many as a direct challenge to traditional family values. They're grappling with a steep decline, the steepest decline in the birth rate in their country. And the societal pressure that South Koreans face to have children, get married is like extremely strong. And we're even seeing things like the 4B movement, which encourages rejecting marriage, childbirth, dating, and even sex. And it's emerged from a form of a feminist resistance against these super traditional expectations that are put on the South Korean women. And despite all of these movements, the stigma still is super fierce in these countries. A lot of women that proclaim that they want to be child-free are still labeled as selfish or even neglecting their duty to their country. The government has even offered programs to families to incentivize them having children, but largely these efforts have not worked because largely they're failing to address the actual issue at play, which is the misogyny, the patriarchy, and just a lot of the issues that the women are having with how they're viewed in their country. But in contrast, we have Japan, and they have this concept of the Parasite single. And so essentially this has gained acceptance even though it has a mixed reputation. And these essentially are adults who remain unmarried and they live with their parents well into their 30s and 40s. And the term does have a bit of a negative connotation, but Japan is largely adopted to this lifestyle. But a lot of young people in Japan are delaying marriage and having children because of the high cost of living in their country. And so Japan offers a very interesting perspective. Instead, they've shifted their focus to policies that support elder care and provide more flexibility for those who choose not to have families. However, like South Korea, Japan also faces that looming issue of a decline in the population. There's people getting old and there's not enough people to replace them. And in countries like Italy and Germany, they face similar issues, but they've tackled them a little bit differently. They've tried to incentivize childbirth by giving them bonuses. But this didn't really tackle the deep-rooted issues like the lack of affordable childcare, but then also the insufficient support in the workplace for mothers. Germany, on the other hand, had a more progressive approach to these issues, and they were trying to offer more parental leave and offer some more money and financial support to these families. But even at that, child-free women in Germany faced a societal judgment, and they started to have these stereotypes where they were portrayed as career obsessed, or even that they didn't have a fulfilling life. So similar to what we see in America. And so the paradox in both of these countries is that although they still try to support families financially, the cultural stigma still persists. And this is what makes it difficult for people to choose a child-free life without having to deal with that judgment that they face from society. And so what is it that we want to see in the future for both child-free people, but also people that want to have children? We're seeing that this is a global issue, and a lot of this is deep-rooted in the culture and traditions of the country. And so, of course, this is not something that you can change easily, but we're seeing that people want change. People want that freedom. So they need to destigmatize the child-free lifestyle. And it is kind of opposite of what Russia's doing because they don't want to make it look good. But in the end of the day, like, you have to change the portrayal. You have to change the idea that it's a bad thing, because that's kind of where people are at right now. This issue is probably going to be pushed more to the forefront since the birth rate is actually declining, and they're probably going to try a few things to try to remedy it. In America, we haven't seen them giving any financial incentives as our birth rate hasn't declined that much, maybe like 1%. But if the birth rate continues to decline, I wouldn't be surprised if they also try a few things. But if we look to these other countries, we can definitely learn and see that countries don't really know how to handle this issue. They don't know how to tackle this issue because it's a cultural thing, and it's not easy to change the culture without destigmatizing the messaging that has been put forward thus far. But what do you guys think about this whole child-free movement? Do you think that government should be involved in influencing the birth rates, or do you think this is something that should be left to the individual to decide? Leave your thoughts in the comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, post the thumbs up emoji. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next YouTube video.